Joining us right now on the 96.9 The Game hotline, Steve Clifford, the head coach of the Orlando Magic. Steve, how are you this morning?
Doing well, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. How have things been as far as getting settled now that you're back in Orlando?
Still, frankly, just trying to get organized. Most of our staff is now here, which helps a lot. We've had a lot of the young players in, and so slowly getting organized here in the office and getting to know the players. But, the guys are working, and I believe we're off to a good start here in the off season.
How long does it take for a head coach like yourself to get settled in a new city? How long does that process take where you show up at work or you go home and you're like, okay, I sort of feel like I've got my routine down?
Yeah, I think like most guys who've done this, this is my sixth NBA stop. I think getting comfortable in the city you can do very quickly. It's just getting up to speed on the team so that you feel like you're expert enough on how guys have to play in order to play well and the strengths and weaknesses of the group so that you can help them. And, so that's kind of where we're at. That's also where obviously getting the staff in here so they're studying too and getting to know the players better helps a lot. But, it takes some time, and frankly, no matter how much you watch, you're not going to get the true sense of your team until you start, working with them in training camp.
I was impressed with the way that first-round pick Mo Bamba handled himself with the media on Friday. I've said many times now I think that he's going to be a fan favorite in Orlando in very short order. Were you impressed with how composed he was, especially given what he had been through the last 24, 48 hours, just an absolute whirlwind of an experience? Your thoughts on the way he handled himself?
Oh, absolutely. Very bright, perceptive guy. I think a lot of personality. And also, I think a very focused, determined player. So I think that there's so much there to like and be excited about.
How many workouts, if any, did Mo Bamba have with the Magic prior to you guys drafting him?
He didn't work out here. Jeff, John, and the personnel people are very thorough here. They did a great job, and they saw him a ton during the season. Frankly, it's not easy to get those top, 7, 8 guys in for workouts like it used to be. A lot of it is agent driven. And even when the guys that do come in to work out, the majority of the guys that are rated as high as he was, they won't work out against other players. So I think the majority of the evaluation has to be done, with their college teams or whatever team they're playing with. And then also, which was a big part with him, was, Jeff and John, they had time with him to interview him in Chicago.
Right. Well, I'm curious about this because I saw the report that he would not work out for Memphis. Now, I did not see the same report when it came to Orlando, but he didn't work out with Orlando. So I'm assuming, Jeff Weltman and John Hammond probably not going to draft a guy that doesn't want to be here. It sounded like, for whatever reason, there was disinterest with his people and Memphis. But that did not happen here, right? The reason he didn't work out wasn't a personal issue. It was because it sounded to me, as genuine as he could be, that he was excited to be in Orlando. So there's a difference there, right?
Oh, absolutely. We had Jeff and John organized a dinner Friday night with Mo and Melvin and Justin and their families, the people that came with them to the press conference in the afternoon, and I would say quite the opposite. I think he's very excited to be here. I think he's confident that this can be a great place for him. And like he said in the press conference, I think also he's, a very, I'd say, perceptive guy. And I think the thought of following the footsteps of Shaq and Dwight is very appealing to him.
I do like the idea that Orlando is sort of becoming the land of the big man, that there's that personality. You know, you look at some of the great sports franchises in all of sports, and they usually have that one thing that distinguishes them from other teams. You know, the Bears, you think of linebackers. With the 49ers, you think of great quarterbacks. With the Braves, you think of great pitchers. And with the Magic, as you mentioned, it's the big men, right?
No question. I would say, 2 trips to the finals, one with Shaq, one with Dwight. And like you said, both guys, tremendous players. Both will be in the Hall of Fame with great personality. And I think Mo has many of those same traits. I mean, he's 20 years old right now, so it's going to take a little bit of time. But, there's definitely a parallel there that you can see.
Steve Clifford, head coach of the Orlando Magic. I know that you mentioned how diligent Jeff Weltman and John Hammond were, along with the Orlando Magic scouts, in vetting all of these guys, finding the right talent that would fit the roster and all of that. Were you at all involved in the draft process, at least consulted?
Yeah, a little bit. It's been my experiences. I've never been anywhere where the coaching staff did a lot with the draft. I think there are more mistakes that are made in our league by coaches jumping in for 2 or 3 weeks after, scouts, general managers, presidents, assistant GMs have watched these guys for years. And, the individual workouts or the small group workouts that we get to see, you have to be careful about. What Jeff and John did here, they had me watch a group of people. It's very similar to what I did in Charlotte. And we sat down, actually had a long, long meeting. I gave them my impressions of the players. I think similar to Charlotte, I mean, all the guys that they liked, I was very much in line with. The way we did in Charlotte was basically with Michael, he would give me a group of guys to watch. If there was somebody I didn't like, I would let him know. But again, regardless of how much basketball you watch, to jump in at the last minute and think that you're going to be a better indicator, a better evaluator than guys who have watched these guys literally for years, to me is just naive. So these guys have been around. They know what wins. And I can tell you this, the way things played out, they had this draft down to a T.
Yeah, no question. When you look, you have limited intel, as you mentioned, because you're sort of, you put that in the hands of the guys that are making the draft pick. But when you have that limited time to look at these picks, to look at these guys work out, to talk to them perhaps, what's the one important quality that you're looking for, whether it's something that you see in a conversation or something that you see on the basketball court? Because as you mentioned, you're not diving in head first the way that the president and the GM are. So you've got this limited sample size. What is it that you're looking for where you say, okay, I only have so much time to look at these guys? What's that one thing you want to see?
Well, for me, it's from I would say a mental standpoint, is competitive spirit combined with basketball IQ. And you get that not by any conversation, but by watching them play on their college team. And Mo, I would rate very highly in both regards. I think that as he gets older and he gets into our league and has more time to just lock in on just, his game, people are going to see. I see a guy that can become a very good offensive player as well as an elite defender. He has a feel for how to play. And he also showed really to be highly competitive, which is, to me, it's where everything starts. When you play 82 games, this is not a league of motivational speeches and, you either have guys who care deeply about winning and playing well or they don't. And so that's critical. The other part is two-way players, more from the physical side. In this league now, much is made of, not having perimeter players who aren't range shooters. And I would say the other thing that's come out in this past 2 years is you can't be playing many guys that are poor defenders, that can't either guard their position or are poor team defenders, because there's so much space on the floor now with everybody playing almost always at least 4 range shooters on the floor and sometimes 5, that it puts your defense in great peril. So, again, in that point, I think that he can be an elite defender, and I also think that eventually he will have the ability to play 4 out, 1 in, and roll hard to the basket a la Capella. But I also think that he has the potential to be a range shooter so that we can play 5 out. And those are really critical qualities now if you want to be a team that can be reckoned with.
Steve Clifford joining us. Just a couple things for you, Coach. I'm sure you've been thinking about this a lot. You're a head coach. It is natural how you're going to use this big man, how you're going to use this talent. Have you thought about what a Mo Bamba lineup will look like? Now, I know that there will be changes. There's a decision to be made with Aaron Gordon. There could be trades in the works. Who knows? But based on what you do know, what do you think a Mo Bamba lineup looks like?
Well, I mean, I think at the defensive end of the floor, it would be that, he can drop more in pick and rolls, which allows everybody to stay home, and it makes your 3-point defense much, much easier for everybody else involved. A la Utah, like they do with Rudy Gobert, and what Miami does with Whiteside. It simplifies things for everybody else, it's a great quality to have. And then, like I said, at the offensive end of the floor, I think he can have a multidimensional pick and roll game where he can flare and hit the jumper or drive closeouts, but he can also roll with speed, which either, collapses the defense and opens up things on the perimeter, or, he'll be a lob threat. So, it will start with that. And, I think that we'll get an initial glimpse of things at Summer League, and then, again, it's an everyday evaluation and then making good decisions about the best plan for him to make progress going forward.
So I don't know if you're aware of this, but you are up for one of the most prestigious award show. You're an award show nominee for the Mikeys, which is our prestigious award show on 96.9 The Game. Comeback of the Year is the category that you're in. Steve Spurrier coming back to Orlando, or coming back to coach. Willie Taggart for Florida State. Dan Mullen for the Florida Gators. Dom Dwyer returning for Orlando City. And Steve Clifford, you, returning with the Orlando Magic. Would you like to make a campaign for a victory, Coach?
No, I'll stay out of that one. I'm a big sports fan, though, so the huge soccer fan, and I'm looking forward to get over to seeing a game, and then a huge college football fan. So, I'll just stay out of that one. No campaigning here.
Well, if you need any tickets to the Orlando City match coming up, I think they're away for a couple of weeks. Yeah, they're away. They're back on July 14th. If you need tickets, just let us know. We can hook you up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Last thing for you. Your thoughts on Dwight Howard. I thought he had a great season with you last year, and then things just fell apart. He gets traded to Brooklyn, and then Brooklyn releases Dwight. I don't really get it. Your thoughts on that as somebody that coached him?
Well, I mean, you have to be within a franchise, obviously, to get the full, truth about where they're at. And Dwight did have a good year, a great year, really terrific year. I think the best year he's had in 4 or 5 years. It didn't translate to our team playing as well as we had hoped or that we had planned for. And then, really decisions are always made from there. So the Brooklyn situation, I think that they're in still the next phase of rebuilding. They have a younger center, and I would say that is the biggest factor in why, they decided to buy him out. They have a young guy that they're committed to. It's year 2 for him, and listen, if Dwight's going to be there, he's going to, be on the floor. So I'm sure that as much as anything, that's what came into their thinking.
Steve Clifford, Magic head coach and Mikey Award nominee. Good luck again, continuing to get settled here in Orlando, and we'll talk again soon, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.